a crucial misperception, I think, has to be corrected if we're going to be effective in Darfur. The UN doesn't move by itself. It has to be moved by the brain inside the United Nations, which is the United Nations Security Council. The most powerful nation in the Security Council is the United States. The UN moves when the U.S. moves it. I worked in the last administration and spent a lot of time doing this stuff. It simply doesn't happen unless we move. So to displace responsibility to other nations or international organizations, which we're the dominant member, does a disservice, I think, to the cause. The U.S. needs to lead in the United Nations now if we are going to take action that's going to change the calculations of the regime in Khartoum and get the peace deal and the protection force that everyone agrees are the central objectives in Darfur. So the urgency now is multilateral action, is leading in the United Nations. The unilateral actions we've taken have been tapped out. They've been discounted by the regime many years ago. It's harder work to work multilaterally. We have a lot of other issues on the agenda. So let's understand and respect the fact that Iran and North Korea and Iraq and other issues are taking up our time and energy. But eggs are going to have to be broken. And we're going to have to expend a little bit of our leverage, or as the President says, our moral and our political capital, if we're going to move this issue in the United Nations Security Council. And the fact is, the great news is that when we've done that in the past, including during this administration, when we've worked multilaterally, we've actually made a difference in Sudan. There have been 3 cases in the 18 years this regime has been in power where the United States has led multilaterally and there has been a major change on the ground in Sudan. The first time was during the 90s when bin Laden lived in Sudan and terrorism was the order of the support for terrorism was the order of the day with the Khartoum regime. The U.S. led, bin Laden was kicked out, the al-Qaeda infrastructure was dismantled, and we saw a real change. The second time, slavery. All of you have known and heard about the issue of slavery in Sudan. The U.S. led in multilaterally, and the regime capitulated, stopped arming the militias that were doing the slave raiding. It ended. The third time has been just in the last couple of years when the Bush administration led internationally, multilaterally, to get a peace deal between the North and the South that everyone said was impossible to reach. There's a track record here. We've just got to actually act. So what does it mean to act in this context? Well, of course, what we have now is 4 years in Darfur where there's been no real cost for committing genocide, no cost for obstructing the United Nations from and without a cost, this will continue. It would be irrational, frankly, for the government of Sudan to stop pursuing a military solution if there is no cost. Multilateral cost. That isn't Plan B, because Plan B was largely unilateral. We have to move multilaterally, and I think there are 5 things we can do, 5 things the United States can take the lead on that would actually make a difference in Khartoum and change the calculation of the government of Sudan. First, we need U.S. leadership to get the kind of sanctions that we've imposed on the businesses in Sudan unilaterally. We need to multilateralize those. We have 160 Sudanese companies now on a list that we freeze their assets. We go after their business. We try to target their businesses. We need to multilateralize those through the United Nations Security Council. That takes leadership. Second thing we can do, same approach, through the United Nations Security Council, take the idea of individually sanctioning the individuals who are most culpable and most responsible for genocide and crimes against humanity, and multilateralize those through the Security Council. And there are 3 people, and I want to name names, because there are 3 people who have been most responsible for the destruction of 400,000 lives in Sudan during the last 4 years. And there are 3 people that haven't yet showed up on our lists, because we're protecting them, because they're the ones that are giving us a lot of information in our counterterrorism cooperation. We're going to have to make a stand here and decide what matters most to us. The 3 people are the Assistant to the President, Nafi Ali, the Director of Intelligence, Salah Abdallah Ghosh, and the Minister of Defense, Abdurrahim Mohammed Hussein. Those are the 3 guys that we need to act. If we don't target the orchestrators, these sanctions are not going to bite. Third thing we can do, whether you agree or not with the International Criminal Court, whether or not we support the ICC, whether or not we sign the ICC Charter, we can quietly provide intelligence, declassified intelligence, to the ICC that can accelerate the indictment process. There is nothing that will get their attention quicker if the United States quietly says to them, okay, we've given you 4 years. We've got information that will lead directly to the prosecution of some of the senior members in this regime. We're going to turn it over in 30 days. You decide what you want to do. That's real leverage. We're not using it. The fourth thing we could do is to plan very transparently, start to plan for specific military operations that might make a difference on the ground if the situation deteriorates. That requires multilateral planning. And it can't just be a no-fly zone. Let me tell you right now, people keep talking about imposing a no-fly zone. It is the height of irresponsibility if we press forward with implementing a no-fly zone, which is the easiest thing in the world to do, is send an airplane over and shoot an airplane on the tarmac that might or might not have been involved in an offensive operation. Well, if Khartoum believes that's all we got, that's all we're prepared to do, the first thing they're going to do is cut off humanitarian assistance to 4 million people. And then it's on us. And if we haven't done the appropriate preparation for ground deployment, let's not go down the road, an irresponsible road of inciting further action on the part of Khartoum. So what I'm saying is accelerated military planning multilaterally through NATO and the United Nations Security Council that looks both at air and ground involvement in Darfur if the situation deteriorates. Just that credible, transparent planning will give leverage to the negotiators for the peace and protection that people need in Darfur. Fifth and finally, and the point of this hearing, we have an unbelievable golden opportunity that is being squandered with each passing 24 hours. There is a confluence of 3 unique factors internationally that I think could help end the war and bring peace to Darfur in the immediate sense. First, the United States government has in fact turned. The worm has turned. The U.S., through Plan B, even though it's inadequate, even though it's too unilateral, the U.S. has made a decision. We've got to start working and imposing a cost and doing what we have to do to get this crisis concluded. So the U.S. is in the right place. The French have just elected a new president willing to work with the United States and who want to resolve the crisis in Darfur. The French have a huge oil investment in Sudan, and they have the most leverage of any outside power with the rebels because they're the main backer of Chad, where most of the rebels are located. Thirdly, and everybody's talked about it, China. You have the first time this regime has opened itself up because it has a vested interest in presenting a new face to the world in the context of the Olympics. It's vulnerable to pressure, and it wants to end this crisis simply because it wants it off its back. We don't care, frankly, what their motivations are, but they have that motivation now. We now have the 3 countries, France, the United States, and China, with the most leverage in Sudan, both governments and rebels. All 3 now, as of yesterday, the French just named their own special envoys. There's 3 envoys. The Chinese, French, and the U.S. have special envoys to work this issue. Why are we not working together? Why are we not hearing that these guys are getting together and they're going to start a major diplomatic initiative to get a peace deal and to get a protection force into Darfur immediately? Historians are going to look back at this perfect diplomatic storm and say either one of 2 things. Boy, they missed a huge opportunity, or, see, that was the turning point, and they seized it. All 3 of these countries have a vested interest now. China, France, and the United States have a vested interest in peace and stability in Sudan, for whatever reason. And that's both the south, where most of the oil is, and in the west in Darfur, because we still have an unfinished agenda in implementing the North-South peace deal. So there is a solution, basically, is the message. There is a solution to the crisis, to the Darfur crisis. And for the sake of the 2.5 million survivors in Darfur, we must seize this opportunity now. Thank you.